Okay, I thought I'd just go over this real quick. Um, Here's a pseudonym for a student. Um, and so when you go in, obviously, um, let's see, ethical issues. I already clicked on it, so it's not showing. Here it is. All right, so you click on that. Click on this to download it, which I've already done. Um, Click on this. And it's going to open on my other screen. I'll pull over. One thing I do is I go capture this information about down to there normally, and then I'll paste it into here, and then I'll space things out a little bit. Give myself a little room to just discuss each point, and this just gives very specific directed Of course, one problem with this is that your comments get really long, so sometimes it's best to separate them out into smaller comments. I like to have it in one place, but I don't like when it starts to loop around. So here we're looking for introducing the problem, purpose, and research questions. Okay, this is not a problem because there's no negative. So I'm writing, and here it's looping around. There's no negative connotation here, negative impact, or anything like that. So I might even suggest negative question mark. I'm not going to get into that because this paper is about ethics. Let's look at the purpose and research questions. I am going to sort of scan through for any APA errors, stuff like that. You know, just teachable moments for writing. I should have track changes on, so I can show them what I've fixed for them or suggested. They're supporting all their statements, which is great, especially with a paper like this. That's sort of an issue that is has some conflict in society about what people believe and think, and what the science supports and does not yet support. So it's just good that they're not just going based off of opinion alone. Um, they're citing pretty much everything. This, I'd say, you know, if I was doing a dissertation, I'd say this is pretty old. Um, but I'm not really worried about that. Let's get into the purpose, which I just flipped down. I see data collection. So I'm wondering, where's your purpose and research questions? I'm looking for it. Purpose here. The purpose is to compare transgender congruence to self-esteem. And I'm going to ask, what does this mean? What research process might this involve? Would this be correlational? And here I'm going to encourage them to use scholarly research language. Is there a negative relationship between X and Y? So there's sort of problem needs work, RQ needs work. However, overall, these aren't huge issues to me. Data collection strategies that you might use to answer your research questions. Discuss factors you would consider when deciding which one to use. Okay, and again, this is an assignment about ethics. So we're going to pay attention to any sort of discussion about sort of ethical issues that are kept in mind while they do this. Collect demographics, okay. Mix of open-ended and closed-ended questions, surveys, assessments. Okay, here I'm saying, so it sounded correlational in nature, but your study now seems to involve some mixed methods. Make sure that all of your elements align. Of course, that's not the biggest issue in this assignment, but they need to be reminded of that, and they need to be learning all the things and putting them together for the whole, in this case, research methods course. All information will be collected online. The demographics I'll be looking for in this study is gender identity. In order to find the best results in identities for gender, I would leave this field blank. Okay, as it would allow for individuals to put gender down. Okay, work on writing mechanics throughout to grow you're saying that Richards et al. Says there are more gender identities being developed. That's the part that worries me. And discovered after, thousands upon thousands of years. I know we're working with some, sort of re-understanding sort of how gender identity is defined, but developing new gender identities is probably not accurate and probably not what Richards et al. Says. Okay, and I'm also going to say relate this. This is a huge ethical issue because you're attending to the gender identity of individuals, which is often very personal and sensitive. So so I like the blank spaces to fill that in, but discussion about mitigating ethical concern would be encouraged. think maybe they mean sexual orientation. But I do like that they're leaving that open, especially with such a sort of hot topic. Yeah, I'm not sure that. You know, it's sort of more are being sort of acknowledged, but I'm not sure that more are developing. That would sort of imply something else. Um, okay, so these three things, I'm going to say, okay, how will you protect participants from being identified? Try to mask their location by using region of the U.S. And it's not that this is a list of things, it's just that the student needs to show me, the instructor in this case, that they are thinking of all the potential ethical issues. Instead, they're just saying things and not really discussing how it is relevant and related to ethical issues and concerns. Race and ethnicity, I'm saying, to, you know, they may not want to be pigeonholed with regard to those either. If it's sort of Cuban versus Puerto Rican, they, for instance, they may not want to be lumped together as Latino. It's just something for them to think about how they could sort of be more open and tolerant, accepting, and ethical is just allowing a participant to sort of be themselves and to clearly indicate how they are. So I'm going to say maybe treat that the same way you did gender identity. Discuss the ethical implications. It would also be important to ask if the individuals are seeking hormone replacement therapy. Right, maybe. Only in some cases, correct? If they identified as transgender individual. So here you don't measure for a confounding variable, you measure confounding variables if you know what they are, and I think they're suggesting that being in a transition surgery or planning for that might be a moderator or mediator, and I think that's a decent point, but they're not really saying it very clearly. Here it's just awkward wording, so I'm just going to point that out. And here, it's always good, now and then at least, to say, great, you're doing well here. And let's go back up and see what the other issues were. So I said good inclusions, but you need more discussion to explain why you're making these choices from an ethical perspective. Now we're going to look at who the target group is, and if there are any ethical issues associated with that. Here they're going on about measuring it. I'm not so concerned with that. Well, this is different because it would have been nice to know this information up ahead, because then it becomes clear why they talk about hormone therapy, etc. If their target group would be individuals that are gender non-conforming or trans. Right, okay, it is imperative that participants identify this way as this is the population I'm targeting, as then the data would be skewed and not accurate. Then, if they don't identify that way, please clarify wording. Okay, transgender is defined by person who. Okay, and notice they're using a lot of citations. I really appreciate that. They're at least showing effort to try to support all their assertions. Okay, but they're going on a lot about who these, definitions rather than the ethical issues associated with this target population. Okay, you appear to be discussing research decisions, but not focusing on the ethical implications of this at-risk population, who may not all be sort of in a place where they feel emotionally stable to share, or they might be might not have rapport with you, and so you want to really discuss that. It looks like maybe they went into this here. This is good. Excellent. They're avoiding children, so that's good. Okay, this is all good. It may not be perfect, but the point is they are working on it. They are trying to provide a logical supported argument. So recruiting members through social media. Okay. So what would sharing the post? what about sharing the post? Might be like, it might be, if we encourage people to share the post, they might be sort of outing themselves or publicizing something that they want to be kept private. So that'd be something to maybe not encourage, or to disclaim it as you encourage it. Okay, not providing compensation. When looking at recruiting participants, it's important to consider conflict of interest. For me, a conflict might be my own person identity. I identify, I'm just going to say, okay. I'm just going to say good insight, because they're pointing out that they may be biased in some ways because of their relation to the target population. Consider bracketing and reflexive journaling with citation to avoid or mitigate personal bias. These are typical things, and you can find these authors talking about it, Yin or Miles and Huberman. In case it's not obvious, about 95% of even psychological research, and not, it used to be pretty common in educational research, to have more qualitative studies. And right now, my experience is about 95% of psychological dissertations are qualitative in nature. I'm not sure why that is trending, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Here we just have an extra period. Anything I notice, I might pay attention to, or I might just highlight the section and say, work on writing mechanics. In the begging of the assessments. I'm just going to say, what does this mean? You need to clarify your wording. Okay, so they'll have anonymity in the survey. What if they share the survey? Could that be an ethical concern? I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to have them think through all aspects. Survey numbers rather than through names and emails. Good. I will not collect names and will offer a chance for emails at the end if participants would like a follow-up of the study as it is conducted. Okay. And so discuss how this might hurt anonymity and confidentiality, but is an option rather than requirement. Okay, no concerns for coercion. Okay, I'm curious how we're gonna, I guess if you're finding them on Facebook, that's, as long as they're not your clients, it's probably not coercive. So now I'm going back up to the grading portion, and I'm gonna sort of address target group identified. I would have liked more discussion of ethical concerns related to the target group. And that's pretty much how I feel about the whole thing. There's just not a whole lot of explicit conversation about ethical issues. Are there other groups that could also be considered? I did not see this addressed. How you would gain access to and permission from this group. You addressed some of this, like conflicts of interest. But did not give much info about gaining access. They did say they're not going to provide compensation, so that's good. Explain possible ethical issues that you may arise if you do decide. You should say, you should discuss this as a hypothetical of what would happen if you did provide compensation and ethical concerns related to it. How you would ensure confidentiality and mitigate any issues of coercion. You did discuss this, but there were some areas where you could have discussed loss of confidentiality or decrease. Emails, sharing. I did not see this one discussed. Other potential data collection methods. Great on that one. They had plenty of resources and their paper was long enough. Here we see they go from page 2 to really 8 in the minimum. From 2 to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they got about 6. So that is enough. We're going to leave that as met. References and title page do not count towards that. And so I'm just going to give this person thank you for this submission. Overall, I think you had a lot of good ideas, but it was only in a single area that you really emphasized the ethical implications of your choices. There were also some aspects that you could have explored further to more sufficiently protect the ethical needs of the participants. Overall, good job. And then I'm going to save it. With my initials and then the date. And then I'm gonna go down here, and I really think that this student did pretty well. It could be a 4.5, which would be a C, but I really think they're more at a 5. They just had a few issues that brought them down to more of a B. And so I'm just going to paste what I just typed. I'm going to add the file. And then I'm going to publish. Now, I could use the faculty grading rubric if I was regrading this for a student. That's a pretty good option to use, but in this case, probably not necessary. It's pretty straightforward. Student grade is not horrible. It's pretty clean cut. So, thank you for paying attention. Hope this helps.